Alright guys, welcome back to F1 News. The Qatar Grand Prix is upon us this weekend, and George Russell with some interesting statements on the current dominance of Max Verstappen, suggesting at least 5 drivers would dominate the championship in a similar way if they were in this year's Red Bull. You'd imagine Russell is putting himself among those drivers. Who are the rest of them? Should there be more or less on this list? Very much interested in your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Firstly, big news for Mexico and Abu Dhabi. Oliver Bearman, current Formula 2 driver for Prema in his rookie year, had a pretty impressive rookie year, all things considered, is looking, well, he will be driving in the Haas for both FP1 sessions at those 2 respective Grand Prix. I would say I might be biased just because he was born in Chelmsford, which is not far from where I grew up, so there might be a bit of local bias in play, but I do think Bearman's been very impressive. His F3 campaign, his F2 campaign so far, especially in Baku, he was mega and has had plenty of great performances throughout the season, been inconsistent but expected for a rookie year. Probably, he's only 18 years of age. I would say he's maybe the most promising Ferrari junior in their Ferrari Academy program, as it were. So we'll see how that goes, but I'm looking forward to seeing Bearman in an F1 car. I think he deserves it, and hopefully it works out well. Does Bearman really want to go and drive a Haas in the coming years? Maybe not, but I think there quite possibly will be a seat for him in Formula 1 in the next couple of years. Same story for Liam Lawson. He was actually FaceTimed by Danny Rick this weekend to tell him that, on Monday actually, I was sitting at lunch and Danny Rick called me and said, you're going to be driving again this weekend. So that is now confirmed. We think Ricciardo's going to be back for Austin. And Helmut Marko has been going on, well, he says a lot, doesn't he, Marko? And he's saying even more about Lawson. Says that he certainly has the potential to be a Grand Prix winner, and he has mastered all of the tasks so far masterfully and under the most difficult conditions. I don't necessarily disagree with this. I think Lawson's been impressive. He's a tough racer and one of the strongest drivers ever in a duel. It's like, even if I was Liam Lawson's mother, I'm not sure I would quite go this far yet. I mean, Lawson's only just come into the sport. But sure, whatever, Marko. But think of him what you will. He's not getting a seat because they're not going to give him one. I mean, come on. If he's one of the best drivers ever to duel head-to-head or, as races, wheel-to-wheel races, you'd think you might have found him a seat, but apparently not. And he did, though, say that he will have a seat 100% guaranteed in 2025. There's been some controversy about this because there was a rumour that Lawson was told, look, be a reserve for 1 more year, and maybe if we fire Perez and Ricciardo goes to the Red Bull seat, you can have the AlphaTauri seat. But sign this deal and we will get you a seat in 2025 anyway. Christian Horner then said, no, that's not the case. There's no guarantees. Don't know what you're talking about. Helmut Marko says, no, he will have a seat. It's basically for sure because in 2025, by the latest, he'll be sitting permanently in a car anyway. So, they're opening the door for it. Lawson will be on the grid at some point, and this is probably his final chance at an F1 car for a little bit of time to come. This does depend somewhat on what happens with Perez, and actually, Marko commented on that explicitly and said that we need to defend second. Now, we talked yesterday that Verstappen might not be so keen, nor would he probably care about helping Perez get second in the championship, but as Marko says, unfortunately, Hamilton is getting closer. 33 points. Perez really should have it covered given the delta in pace, but it's not impossible. And even Tom Clarkson has heard things that suggest, or even as he says, I think his future at Red Bull might even depend on that second place, saying that if he can't finish second in the RB19, it doesn't look particularly favourably on Perez, and that might be quite critical. I think he will hold on to it, but it really ain't looking good. Also, some drama today on the Andretti entry. Lawrence Stroll, as he does. There's also been some rumours today that Lawrence Stroll is potentially looking to sell Aston Martin to the Saudis. This is maybe not a massive surprise. He's made some progress with the team, and the Saudi Arabian investment fund, whatever they're called, would be offering big cash, and he would make a good return on his initial purchase and investment. In addition to the fact that they're already sponsored by Aramco, it might make sense. It also might mean Lawrence Stroll, well, his son, Lance Stroll, ain't in the team much longer if that was to be the case. Now, he also commented on the possibility of Andretti and said that they don't need more than 10 teams, things are working really well, and if it ain't broke, you don't need to fix it. So this is like the classic thing that these team owners say. They don't want a new team in because the money, it's, they're greedy, right? It's how people are. It is what it is. They want all the money. They don't necessarily want what's best for the sport, and the drivers have been asked to comment on this as well and have generally said, well, they've got good racing pedigree. If the teams and the Formula, FIA and the Formula 1 management agree, then sure, it's going to be great. But the drivers don't really want to go too far saying comments comments on this either way either, because, you know, their bills are paid by people who don't really want this to happen. So, yeah, big question as to whether it will be, but some more drama brewing on that one for sure. Now, George Russell went on the Beyond the Grid podcast and gave some interesting comments, especially on the current dominance of Verstappen, right? And exactly who could challenge Verstappen in that car. His statement was as follows: I can very, very confidently sit here and say there are probably 5 drivers on the grid that if you put them in the best car, they will win the championship. Now, we'll discuss what he says on the other drivers here in a second. But this is pretty interesting because you look at the championship this year, Perez is 33 points ahead of Hamilton for P2, but he's so far behind Max. And has Perez been a top 10 driver this year? No, I don't think he's been particularly close. So I'd say this season in the dominance of the RB19, there's probably more than 5 drivers that would have won the championship in that car. The question is, could they have beaten Max in the car? But also, in a more competitive season, let's say 2022 was more competitive than this year. Verstappen still won by a landslide, and the car was clearly better than the Ferrari in the second half of the season, but Perez didn't get P2 last year. He was only P3. So in that circumstance, how many drivers on the grid would have won, and also how many would be doing so in a similar way to which Verstappen presently is? Maybe nobody would be as in tune with that car as Max is, but there's still a lot of drivers, I think, that would put big numbers on Perez's head, as it were. So that's what Russell says. 5 drivers on the grid that could win a championship in this manner, I think it kind of implies, given the current circumstances. If they had the best car, he goes on to say that, of course, Lewis is one of those guys. I'm going head-to-head with him week in, week out, which is one of George's favourite things to say. That gives me the benchmark, and it's a pretty high benchmark right now compared to where Russell is with respect to Hamilton. I don't think I've been pushed in my whole career like I've been pushed in this last year and a half, which does make sense because, you know, he was teaming with Latifi for some time, so obviously there's going to be a bit more of a challenge nowadays. These are the drivers on the grid, and where do you think this goes? Because, okay, Verstappen can win the championship in the best car, sure. Perez maybe could if his teammate was Logan Sargent, but the reality, no disrespect to Sargent, I could have said anyone, Mazepin, you know, Latifi, whatever. You get the picture. But let's say there was like maybe an even more solid driver in that Red Bull car. How many could do what Verstappen is currently doing? Verstappen is one, Hamilton is the other one. Alonso, I think, has got to be in consideration as well. But the remainder of the 5, it's actually quite tricky to say. I'm guessing Russell puts himself in this category, and he must do, right? Russell, and to be honest, I would say that he should. Not because he is in that category necessarily, but just because as a driver, as a athlete, as a racer, you've got to believe you're good enough, you know? Like, there's no point thinking, well, it's probably not me, I'm not in that category. Like, you know, I think you've got to think that way. You've got to have that little bit of ego if you actually want to achieve anything, especially in this type of sport. So I don't blame Russell putting himself in the category. I'm not sure he's quite deserving of it on his performance this season, but I get it. But let's say it is Russell, Verstappen, Hamilton, I'm guessing he means Alonso. Who's the 5th? Because there's a few candidates here. Norris is one, definitely, although, you know, not won a race yet. Lots of pace, has been close to race wins, lots of P2s. Is he, you know, is Norris good enough to win a championship in that car for the year? I think he is. Definitely against a team like Perez, he would be. But, you know, in the way that Verstappen's doing it, that's a question. Leclerc as well. That's another one that comes to mind, who is still leading the head-to-head qualifying against Sainz. But Sainz has also been really good over the last couple of races as well. So Leclerc, you would think Leclerc's got the pace to. Does he have the consistency to? I don't know. But if Russell thinks he can win a championship in the dominant car, Leclerc, I think, certainly can as well. And also Sainz, I know that he's had the last few races have been very good for him, and therefore people are like, wow, Sainz is back. He has been a bit questionable for some time. I'm not going to, like, the last season was not great. The start of this season was not great. He's been back on form lately when the car has suited him a bit more in terms of the setup, and I do think Sainz is a solid driver, but I'm not sure I'm putting him in this category. There's also Albon as well. Albon might be worthy of consideration here, and also Piastri, like, you can't really rule out Piastri as well. He's very new to the sport, though, and, you know, then you've got the likes of Ricciardo, and yeah, even, like, Hulkenberg's not bad, but I don't think that he would be, you know, dominating as Verstappen presently is, and Albon you've got to think about as well. But, yeah, which of the 5? I would say Verstappen, Hamilton, Alonso. I would probably put Norris in that ballpark as well now, and then maybe Leclerc, and then maybe Russell. That would kind of be the way my list goes, I think. But then again, there's also part of me that says, well, you know, in the Formula 2 Championship back in 2018, Russell dominated it and beat Norris comfortably, so maybe that doesn't really say that much, but it's something to think about at the very least. For this weekend then, these are the rear wing configurations. As you can tell, these are high downforce rear wings. This circuit is pretty much maximum load, lots of corners, lots of downforce required, and also lots of cooling required. These cars this weekend will be run on the maximum cooling settings. The sides of the car, you'll see the kind of the grills or the radiators, whatever, are opened as wide as they possibly can. They want to get all the air through those cars as they can because it's going to be hot in Qatar and possibly set up a couple of the hottest races of the year in the sprint and the Grand Prix itself. Chances for mechanical DNFs, certainly. A couple of circuit tweaks as well. They have resurfaced the circuit. This is what it now looks like. Is this good or bad for tyre wear? I really don't know. We shall see. They've got the hardest tyre compounds, I'm pretty sure, this weekend, pretty much. Last time out in 2021, it was a 2-stopper, and that's probably what they will go for again, but we'll see. High temperatures, high tyre deg circuit. It should be a 2-stopper, you would think. With the resurfaced circuit, we don't really know. This has also been changed. The DRS activation point has been pushed back by 70 meters. So it used to be 130 meters after turn 16. It's now 200 meters after turn 16. They believe you should be able to follow closer, therefore less DRS is beneficial, which technically should be true. I mean, we last raced here in 2021. It was not easy to follow then. It's not easy to follow today, but it is easier to follow. The dirtier isn't quite as bad as it was in 2021. It's not great, and we've discussed that before at length, but it's not quite as bad. And therefore, this should be a perfectly reasonable change. But to be honest, on this circuit, the only real overtaking chance is into turn 1 after the DRS and maybe turn 6. A bit of a hairpin there that you can possibly send one down the inside of. And just two final things before the weekend begins here. Firstly, from Mercedes, we do believe they're going to bring a major upgrade in Austin. Apparently it's ready now and they could have brought it this weekend in Qatar. The issue is sprint race always makes things more complicated to get the setup right with the new upgrades. And of course, it's, well, to be fair, it's the same in Austin, isn't it? It's a sprint race there as well. So that's one side of things. But also, it's a brand new track for these ground effect cars. Whereas COTA, we've driven there for years. Everyone knows what it's like. It's very kind of, you know, it's known inside out, as is said here by AMUS. So yeah, Mercedes have delayed that upgrade package, apparently a major one for Austin. We'll see if that gives them a bit of a step because last year it did, right? They brought that upgrade in Austin. It made some progress immediately, and then come Brazil, they actually got it nailed in and they won the race around there. So maybe Mercedes are going to try and do a similar thing with the W14. There has been lots of discussion as to the trade-off, though, because it feels like Mercedes are bringing more than Ferrari are at this part of the season, and maybe that will be enough to beat them in the championship. Will that be enough to ensure that next season they start on the right foot? That's another debate entirely. So very much interested to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.